Teton County, you want to speak?
Little gavel. All right, committee, we'll get started.
Ran into Randy yesterday.
With that, Marilyn, if you'd call the roll.
Representative Chadwick. Representative Klauston.
Here.
Representative Hornock.
Here.
Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Penn.
Here.
Representative Trujillo.
Here.
Representative Ward.
Here.
Representative Yin.
Here.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So committee, we have two bills in front of us this morning. This will be our first day doing Senate files. And so just to remind everyone, if you see a blue copy in your folder of a Senate file, it means it's the engrossed version, which means there were amendments added on in the other body. So the bill has been rewritten to incorporate those amendments and sent over to us. And so you can easily look at the blue copy versus the white copy of the original Senate file to see what those amendments were. And actually about 8 years ago, it got easier when we started putting all the amendments online. So if it's not readily apparent what the amendment did or is in the blue copy, you can usually look on the internet and locate the amendments in the bill and track those in yourself. So with that, first up today will be Senate File 4, the North American Industry Classification System Amendments. And this was a interim committee topic for Labor Health. But since nobody up here was here for the interim, we're going to invite Mr. Wolf, the Department of Workforce Services Administrator, to present the bill, if that's okay. Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm Jason Wolf. I'm the administrator for Workforce Standards, which encompasses the Workers' Compensation Program. As Chairman Zwanitzer said, Senate File 4 was a interim committee topic. We actually brought this forth to the Labor Committee. Just some back history so everybody understands what the bill does. And so in workers' compensation, we use a classification system called the NAICS system, stands for North American Industry Classification System. It is a nationwide system that's used in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Every 5 years, the NAICS manual is updated to include, they look at different industries and decide, which industries go in which group, which subsector, et cetera. So typically there are only minor changes which have not required us to change the statute over several years. However, 2022 updates included a handful of updates that I can walk through here in just a second. And I think just for the committee's knowledge, Wyoming statute here 2714-108 is what we call our coverage statute. So the NAICS codes that are specifically enumerated in this statute are what we call required coverage. And in Wyoming, we only require coverage of what we call extra hazardous industry. And certainly folks not enumerated in the statute, such as retail and other sectors, can opt into the system if they choose to, but they are not required to carry our coverage, meaning they can go to a private market and get coverage if they choose to do that. With that, Mr. Chairman, maybe just a quick walkthrough of the bill. Okay, so let's see, starting on page 1, of course, just the catch title, and I think just for your guys' information, the Senate amendment simply included adding one word in the catch title to the North American Industry Classification System manual was the word added. And then down at the bottom is where we start, 2714-108 on page 1, and then moving over to page 2, line 10, you'll see the wholesale trade sector 42. That includes a handful of changes, and simply updating the numbers is what we're doing. I would just like to note that these changes are not adding any sectors to the required coverage. It simply changed some of the wording in the manual and altered the numbers and collapsed some into one category and others that separated it out. So just for clarification. So from lines 10 down to line 22, You'll see that we have 4 changes, just updating the numbers in the NAICS manual. Moving over to page 3, there's 2 more in the wholesale sector. And then page 3, line 7, you'll see retail trade sector. There are 3 changes in that section. And again, just updating the numbers, not adding any required coverage for any classifications or industry. Also over on page 4 includes just a few more updates to the retailers. And then page 4, line 10 is the information sector. And you'll see 2 changes in that subsector as well. Moving over to page 5. You'll see that we have the NAICS Industry 92215. We believe that at some point in the past, this was miswritten, if you will. And again, it looks like if you look at subsection D on line 15, it looks like we're adding a sector. However, it's this sector was included in 92215 in previous statute, in the current statute. So the 92215 is just changing that to parole offices and probation offices, which were previously covered under the statute. And then line 14 adds subsector D to then clarify the fire protection, including firefighters performing certain duties. So, and then section 2, page 5, line 23 is the repealer. That goes back to the page 4, line 8. And what that did was there was a subsection 5 there that this sector got collapsed into the one subsector 457. So that is the repealer. And then the effective date is, of course, July 1st, 23. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's a brief walkthrough of the bill, but would be happy to answer any questions.
So are these new codes already effective in the industry nationwide? I mean, is there any reason we need to make it effective immediately? Or are we behind the gun, or does everybody change at the same time?
So, Mr. Chairman, good question. The NAICS manual is technically effective on January 1st. You know, we had to go through and make some changes in the computer system in order to get it right. However, because the legislative body had the foresight to outline which sectors by name, we knew that it was just a matter of, we knew that XYZ was included. Now it's just changed to ABC. So really no need to make it effective immediately. It wouldn't hurt if you did.
Committee, other questions? Seeing none currently. Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you.
Anybody here to testify in Senate File 4? Exciting stuff. Apparently not. Anybody here to testify against Senate File 4? Just making sure. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on Senate File 4?
Move the bill.
Moved by Chadwick.
Second.
Seconded by O'Hearn. Any amendments, committee? You don't know it, but you could cause some real damage if you put some amendments on some of these fun things. Seeing none, Marilyn, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 4.
Will do. Representative Chadwick,
Aye.
Representative Klauston.
Aye.
Representative Horner,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Penn.
Aye.
Representative Trujillo,
Aye.
Representative Ward,
Aye.
Representative Yin,
Aye.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
All right.
The bill passes.
So committee is an interim committee bill. One of the 9 of us gets to carry this on the floor. If anybody feels so inclined.
I can do it.
Representative O'Hearn, congrats. You have Senate File 4. Which is probably safe because there's more coming and now you're off the hook.
Yeah.
Next up, committee, we're going to go to Senate File 10, the Licensed Professional or Counselor Compact. Is that right? Licensed Professional Counselor Compact. It's a 767 page bill. which I've been informed by just about everybody, we don't dare amend it because then, the compact doesn't work. So it's always exciting. And it also was a committee bill. Anybody from the department here wants to present? Miss Lindsay, if you'd like to. So committee, it isn't necessarily standard practice to have one of our government affairs lobbyist people present a bill. But because she spent most of her life or last year of her life on this and most of your professional life in this profession. If you, oh, and we do have the bill presenter here as well. Well, Senator Pappas, do you want to officially present the professional counselor compact bill to us? Or maybe come hang out.
Voluntold.
I'd be glad to speak to it.
I think for sake of process, it's nice to actually officially have a legislator present the bill, but welcome Senator Pappas, and if you want to immediately turn it over to Miss Sino.
Semino, yes,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You certainly are welcome to. Welcome, Senator Pappas, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Yeah, I can certainly have Lindsay give you all the particulars, but just a little bit background for those of you who have not dealt with interstate compacts in the past. I have actually been working for many years on interstate compacts with the National Center for Interstate Compacts through CSG, and have actually been on a few teams that have written some of them. And we've brought in compacts to the body before, and we recently passed one for speech language pathologists. The reason for compacts is for, especially these occupational compacts, are for practitioners to be able to work across state lines with ease. It's basically a issue of portability on most compacts, licensure compacts. So as this particular compact allows a practitioner to hold a license in a home state, and then if they meet all the requirements of the compact, then they can practice in another state without obtaining a new license there. All they would obtain there is a what's the document? The privilege to practice document. And it usually comes with a fee, so that the states that do accept people who practice under a compact are available. They can still keep their boards whole by collecting a fee for that. So, but what they do for Wyoming, especially, is provide our state, who are very short on practitioners in actually many occupations, this one being one, it allows our citizens access to quality care, in this case, counseling. So we also are able to, our practitioners are able to work across state lines, assuming the states in our perimeter and elsewhere join the compact. It's easy for our practitioners also to work in other states, and a lot of times that comes it's very helpful, especially for patients who travel and want to keep continuity of care. And so this bill also allows for the ability to have our active duty military PCS who have a permanent change of station. So a lot of their spouses will have a profession, in this case, counseling. And if they come here, they can begin working immediately upon paying the fee and showing their credentials for the compact. So without further ado, that's the reason for the compact. Again, greater access to the care, portability, and ease for our professionals to practice out of state. Again, there's no money that comes out of the state coffers. It's all paid by the registrants, the people who are licensed. We can get out of the compact if we don't like it in the future. So it's in my book, a win-win. So I'll turn it over to Lindsay in case she has a couple of additional comments.
Welcome, Ms. Miller. Floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Lindsay Semino with the Wyoming Counseling Association. We've had the wonderful opportunity to work with Senator Pappas and the Labor Committee in the interim to bring this bill forward to you today. The Wyoming Counseling Association is very eager to join this compact. Yes, for the additional help of licensed mobility for people to come into the state and help with our mental health, but as well as our practitioners not feeling as though they need to leave the state in order to practice across state lines. Yes, there is reciprocity. It can be a very time consuming as well as a very expensive process to maintain. And so this would give our practitioners the ability to stay in Wyoming as well as pay a nominal fee in order for the privilege to practice within other states. So we're very excited to bring this for you today, and I stand for questions.
Questions, Ms. Miller? Representative Chadwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is just for my own edification. You say nominal fee. What are we talking? $300, $250?
Ms. Miller, if you know.
If you know.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Chadwick, I am not able to say for sure. The fees will be based on the commission as well as who is participating. I can tell you that our renewal fee, which I'm getting ready to pay because my birthday is on Monday, is approximately $145, and it should be less than a renewal fee, as well as the initial licensing fee, which I believe I'm going to look at the licensing board while I say this, $300 is the initial licensing fee. So it should be significantly less than both of those licensing fees.
Other questions, Committee Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supposing in the future we decided we didn't want to be a part of this compact, what would be involved in getting out of it?
Ms. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ward, we would need to pass legislation removing Wyoming from the compact. That has never happened. When I testified in front of the Senate, my national representative with the American Counseling Association was going to look to see if Wyoming has left any compacts. And to my understanding, that has not occurred. So our compacts have worked for our professional licensing boards up to this point, but I do believe it would take a legislative action.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of my constituents has a concern that we would not be able to get out of the compact without, quote, exorbitant fees. Can you speak to that? Are there fees involved if we wanted to get out, or is it only legislation?
Ms. Miller, if you know. Or Representative Senator Pappas. Either one.
Yeah, Representative Ward, no, there aren't any fees to get out. There's fees, yearly fees to belong to the compact that the board will pay out of the licensing fees of the registrants, but to get out, no, we just repeal this act. That's all. We just repeal this law. And I believe there's a stipulation that you have to give them notice of 6 months as well. But since we only meet once a year, it's usually not an issue. Again, as Lindsay said, we're in over 40 some compacts. We've never gotten out of one. They tend to be very beneficial for the folks that are using them.
Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To either one of you, but probably Senator Pappas, you know, we have 40 compacts in Wyoming. We have more coming. There's an expense with doing these every time. Do you see this ever being more of an administrative function of a department instead of legislature having to pass a compact law for every profession that comes forward?
Senator Pappas.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, no, I don't. It's required. Compacts are agreements between states. Okay. So I don't think that our state at least would ever allow would give up that ability to go into an agreement, would give that authority to an administrative body. We just would not do that. Compacts are legally binding between states, and so I would never see that. I would see it always take legislation to enter in a compact.
Further questions, committee? I'm not going to go through the bill page by page because I know the interim committee went through it for 2 full meetings and it is standardized language. But if anybody does have specific questions, any sections of the bill, I'm certainly happy to entertain this question.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I may
Go ahead.
point out because of what you just brought up, the actual language of the compact. So when you would start with Article 2 and go through, I don't know, I think usually 15 of them or so, that cannot change. You can't change one word, okay? Because every state has to adopt the identical language. You can change stuff, you know, behind the enactment date and whatever. There's usually a little bit of language in the later on sections. That's basically all you can change. You can't change if there's something actually in the compact. You can't change it, or else you just, if you do, you can't enter into the compact.
Representative Penn.
So is there currently, oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there currently 16 states that are a part of this? And how are they doing with satisfying their workforce needs because of this? Is this beneficial to them?
Ms. Semino, if you know.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Chairman, Representative Penn. It's currently, I believe, 17 states that have enacted the compact. There are also, I'm guessing while looking at this map, approximately 10 more that have pending legislation, including Wyoming. I can tell you that in 2021, Alabama enacted the compact underneath emergency orders in order to address their mental health issue while waiting for it to pass through the legislature. And they did see immediate results. I'm being told 17 states for sure. As far as our neighboring states, we see Colorado, Utah, and Nebraska have all enacted this legislation. North Dakota is also pending with legislation this session as well. And they have seen not just an improvement in licensed mobility, which has helped with their workforce, but also with continuity of care as far as whether a client moves, relocates for school, is the spouse of somebody within the military. They are able to bring that license to that new state and start work immediately, as opposed to going through the reciprocity process, which can take several weeks.
Okay, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 51, section M, it talks about an emergency rule. It says upon determination that an emergency exists, the commission may consider and adopt an emergency rule without prior notice. It goes on to say an emergency rule is one that must be adopted immediately in order to meet an imminent threat to public health, safety, or welfare, or prevent a loss of commission or member state funds. My question is, what kind of emergency are we talking about here? And how would have the scamdemic emergency applied?
Go ahead, Senator Pappas, and I
Mr.
believe she's talking about the COVID public health emergency when she uses that phrase.
Mr. Chairman, the rules that are allowed under the rulemaking authority of the compact do not go outside the confines of the compact. So the rules are really only dealing with the administration of the compact. Okay. Certainly, I've had questions on the Senate side as well about, can this force Wyoming to do things that it doesn't want to do? No. The practice, every state has its own practice act and how it deals with any issues with the practice of the particular profession. And anybody working under the compact if they come into our state, they have to practice under our statutes. So nothing in the compact can reach out into the state and change anything we do as far as the practice of occupational therapy in Wyoming. And so the rules are the same way. The rules will only deal with the administration of the compact. I can't tell you what an emergency issue would come up inside of a compact. I don't know that, but it certainly wouldn't affect anything that we do in Wyoming.
Ms. Semino, and any other compacts we work with, that you're aware of what an emergency, have we ever had one come up, or are you aware of any of emergency rules having to be promulgated?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not able to speak to that. What I am able to speak to is that, again, this language is very standardized. This way, then, in case of whatever emergency may occur, then we don't have to come back and amend the compact in all of the joining states. I am being told that it is 17 states and 18 that are pending. That's approximately 35 states that we would need to amend if there was an emergency. And so to have this kind of standardized language, it saves me a trip in front of this wonderful committee later on if needed.
We like seeing you. Representative Ward, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it seems like you might not know, but I'm a little uncomfortable here if we don't know what kind of emergencies we're talking about with this language. What does this mean when there's an emergency? What kind of an emergency, and what kind of changes could happen based on an emergency?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
again,
sir.
the only things that could change are the administration of the compact. If an emergency came up, maybe they would say under the compact, there's probably a clinical and continuing education required from the practitioners. Well, maybe they needed to waive the hours to if somebody didn't have their continuing education completed yet, but yet there was an emergency and they needed a lot of OTs or something. I don't know, but it has nothing to do with anything other than the administration of the commission's administration of the compact. It can't reach out and change anything in our state. It's only how they administer the people working under the compact. That's all they have the authority to that the rules that they will promulgate, they'll only deal with the compact itself and the administration of the compact.
And so maybe we'll save the question if there's anybody else out there who can weigh in as well. Other questions, Representative Hornock?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What prevents licensed professionals right now from being involved in other states, practicing in another state?
Senator Pappas, if you want.
Mr. Chairman, nothing. I mean, you can get a license in every state if you want. You would have to have multiple licenses at a huge burden on yourself to get a license in every state that you want to practice in. But under the compact, you hold a single license. And when you typically go into a state to get a license, you have to show all your credentials. You have to show your education, you have to show your clinical work, you have to show whatever is required. You have to present that, and then that goes to their board or whoever reviews applicants, and then they have to review you and decide whether you meet the qualifications to get licensed, and then you pay the fee and you get licensed. Well, that takes time. Under a compact, none of that gets looked at. Okay, if I've got a Wyoming license and I'm in a compact and Colorado's in that same compact, they're not going to look at any of my education. It's already done. Because they accept the Wyoming license. All I have to do is pay my fee and get my privilege to practice certificate. That can be a matter of hours, all online as well. So it's portability, but nothing stops you from getting 50 licenses and one in every state if you'd like. And one other point, you don't have to practice under the compact if you don't want. This is optional. So our practitioners are not forced to be in the compact. You choose as a practitioner whether you have to be licensed first, And then you can choose if you want to practice under the compact. So it's an opt-in, it's optional.
Representative Hornak, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you can, I guess my question is, how does somebody get licensed currently in the state of Wyoming? This talks about a test. Is that the same test that we're talking about here? If somebody is currently licensed in Wyoming, do they automatically become that? How is that the parameters of practicing in Wyoming currently under a license may be different than practicing in another state? Is it very similar to get that license in others? I know there's potentially a long process that you can go through, but are the parameters very similar, especially with the testing that's required?
Ms. Simmons, do you want that, Senator Pappas?
Mr. Chairman, I'll hand it off to Lindsay here, but yes, the whole idea of the compact is to make all these professionals meet the minimum requirements. So they all have to be the same. But I'll let Lindsay speak to that since she's gone through it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hornak. I will start by saying that the process does take several weeks. As far as the test, the reason that we do not name a test is because the test is updated and the name can change over time. For example, in 2011, when I took the National Counselor's Examination, it was called the NCE. I will be honest with you, I do not know the name of the test, but I know that it's about 6 initials long. And so it has been updated for current practices and it has been updated to include additional information. And so because of that, we do in statute avoid naming a test so that we do not have to come back and change it later. I was required to take a test. I was required to be supervised underneath a licensed professional counselor for 3,000 hours. I believe 1,200 of that had to be direct hours. 1,800 could be indirect, which is notes, trainings, books, anything of that nature. I have now been fully licensed since 2014. To maintain that, I have to have 45 additional continuing education hours every 2 years. I believe 6 of that has to be in ethics. 3 of that needs to be in counseling supervision if I want to be a clinical supervisor, which I did do this time around. That is something I am interested in pursuing, as well as 3 hours in suicide assessment and intervention. Different states require different educational requirements. When you are in grad school, they encourage you to look up whatever state you plan on living in so that you are able to pursue those requirements and meet them right away. For example, Colorado does have very similar requirements that we do, but they require a jurisprudence test in order to become licensed in the state of Colorado. We do not require that. Did I cover all of the things? Did I miss anything?
So just to, Mr. Chairman, just to add to
Let me just
that.
double check, Representative Hornak, did that cover your question?
Yes, but I do have some follow-ups. So, but yeah,
Senator Pappas?
I just want to add to that because she brings up one point. Remember, the compact has specific parameters that everybody has to follow, but states can add as Colorado has. And if I'm a Wyoming practitioner and I want to practice in Colorado, I would have to also meet the other requirement. So it's up to the practitioner, if you're practicing under the compact, whatever state they go into, they have to meet any additional requirements that state. If we put additional requirements on here, for instance, then they would have to meet that. But, you know, the national exam is the same exam everybody takes. There's a minimum certain clinical hours. There's all sorts of standardized things across the nation. So that we can be assured that somebody who's licensed in Colorado has at least what we consider minimum. And so the compact states agree to that. And that's why the ability to issue privileges to practice is so easy. And so what I call portable, because those requirements have already been looked at. So
You have a follow-up then, Representative Hornock?
I do. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So what happens right now in our Zoom day and age where you have somebody practicing here in Wyoming? And I imagine that with this in particular, that might not be the best way to facilitate, the interaction with somebody in this situation. But how does it work right now over Zoom when you could have somebody in Timbuktu and somebody in Wyoming? Just curious.
Lindsay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, we've actually done some discussion and research on this. And as long as the provider does their due diligence to confirm the location of the client, for example, I have a client I do see via telehealth in Jackson. I've done my due diligence to confirm that they are in Jackson as far as collecting their residential address as well as their mailing address. They do not match, but they are both located within the same city. I do have a copy of their driver's license. I do have a copy of their insurance card. All of it suggests that they are in fact within Wyoming. Because I am only licensed in Wyoming, if this client travels to visit family out of the state, we do take a break from treatment during that time. Was that addressed, Mr. Chairman?
Success?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So that client does have to be, even if it's over Zoom, it does have to be within the state boundary.
Mr. Chairman, as rules are written for the Wyoming Licensing Board as of today, yes, I can only see clients via Zoom if they reside within the state of Wyoming, which is one of the reasons why compacts have become so popular with technology. Is then if my client does travel, for example, Alaska, and Alaska is part of the compact, I'm able to then continue services because that state and the state that I am located in are in that mutually agreed contract.
Keep
Thank
going.
you, Mr. Chairman.
We're gonna
So,
get there. Go ahead.
Yeah. I guess my question would be, so we have a situation in Wyoming where we encourage as much as possible. We even pay student loans for some industries for people to come to Wyoming and practice in Wyoming. It's difficult to get somebody to come to the rural area. I'm curious if there is any sentiment that those practicing within the state are under the umbrella right now where there's, and sometimes it's helpful to have a lack of competition on their part. So they're practicing in a small rural area. They're the go-to person for that area. Not that I don't like the competition aspect, but it protects their practice in a certain small rural area. So now you have a compact where somebody from any other state or one of these 17 other states can come in. They can practice and kind of maybe take over. Or is there a situation where that individual practicing in a small rural community right now can up and leave and they're gone, and it creates a void in this area. I'm wondering if that has been thought about, if that has been seen, if that's a concern, or it's not a big deal. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hornock, what you have described is actually a very common concern when we are discussing compacts. And what we are finding as we have talked with our practitioners within the state of Wyoming is twofold. The first is that in many ways it is a fallacy that with the reciprocity process right now, if a very big, expensive out-of-state company wanted to come in, pay all the reciprocity licenses and take over Wyoming, they could. We haven't seen that happen. So that I would like to speak to that part first, that has not taken place. The second being, as far as the competition piece, I do not hide the fact that there is a mental health crisis within Wyoming. As a licensed professional counselor, I personally feel like I've been drinking from a fire hose since 2020. Our practitioners are tired. They are burned out. They are excited for the relief that could be providers coming into this state and helping with the burden that is the unmet caseload within Wyoming. And so as far as competition, we as providers and practitioners, we view it as a reprieve.
Mr. Chairman, could I add to that as well? Actually, when we were dealing with this, the SIPAC, Psychologist Compact, it was noted that it actually works in the reverse. It actually allows our practitioners to stay here. It was testimony was said that there weren't enough patients in a particular area for a practitioner to stay. But if they had the ability to see patients outside of the state via telehealth, psychology in that case, telecounseling here, then they could stay here with a much broader patient load, because in their community, there's just not enough people that they could, make a living just with who's local. And so with the ability to compact, they could virtually work anywhere through telemedicine and telecounseling, telehealth. So heard that under another compact testimony.
Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So tell me how long this compact has been ongoing, because it sounds to me from other when this was heard before the other chamber, it was said that if we were in the first 10 states to join, that we could be involved in the bylaws, and the bylaws are still under construction. So we actually don't have bylaws. But you're telling me that some states this has already been put into place. And so practitioners are practicing in a situation where there is no bylaws. And so if you could just speak to that a little bit, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's the all compacts that are that way. And I've always, being pretty fluent in how the compacts work and how they're structured. It would be beneficial if we're going to join a compact to be in there at the beginning. Okay, when I first brought this bill, the compact hadn't hit the 10 states yet. And, unfortunately, we didn't pass it. And now it has, and so they're starting to write the rules and regulations. Well, we're not at the table. We don't have a voice in that. So I've always told my colleagues that, look, if we're going to get into a compact, let's get in there so we can have a voice at the table to write the rules and the regulations and set up the commission. However, even though we didn't get in there at the beginning, there's nothing saying that by not getting in there, we've lost everything and we shouldn't get in. That we don't want to go there. It still provides a lot of benefit. It's just that we would have had a voice at the table if we would have gotten in early. Didn't happen. But you're going to see more compacts coming down the road. I've actually CSG has actually offered to me, and I've talked to the LSO about providing a compact 101 class to any member of the legislature that wants to take it, because they are a difficult concept to grasp, and why we should do it. Well, you're going to see one coming for dentistry. You're going to see one coming for a lot of different. It's just the tip of the iceberg right now. All of the professions are finding that mobility of their licensure is really, really important for them and for their clients and patients. And so again, the reason why we weren't at the table for writing the rules and regs is because legislators had apprehension about, they were thinking they're going to give up some sovereignty or something if we join these compacts. It's just not the case. It's a case of just having legislators understand the mechanics behind the compacts and what they can and cannot do. So I don't know if I answered your question very well. I'm sorry.
She'll ask another one, I bet.
Yeah.
Resident Penn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how soon would how soon would we be able to enact this, as far as when would we start seeing a reprieve? And then in association with that, I've had constituents reach out and say that, you know, we apparently entered into a compact with EMS previously, and that didn't fix our problem. We have a great need with EMS. And so we were hopeful that that this compact would fix our staffing solutions, and it didn't. And now we're in this compact that is difficult without, you're saying, legislation to get out of if we so chose. So how soon would we start to see evidence that this is beneficial or not?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, forgive me, Senator, Mr. Chairman, Representative, some clarifying information. The commission is still being formed and they are still meeting to form their rules. We will not be able to, those rules will not be done, and people will not be practicing under the compact until the beginning of 2024. Therefore, nobody currently is practicing under the compact without rules. That those are still being formed. Therefore, if we enact the compact now, we might be state 18. We still will be part of that process through the rest of 2023 before things are officially moving and practicing within 2024. As far as medical compacts, they're complicated. Staffing issues are complicated. I can't speak to that as a mental health professional. I can speak to, as a private provider, that I run my own shop. I hang my own shingle. I answer my own phone. For me, that portability is going to be instantaneous for my clients who have either moved out of state or are traveling for work. And so I will see it pretty immediate within 2024. As far as the greater statewide impact, I think we'll have a good answer for you within the first 12 months.
And in addition, you have to understand too that this is just a tool. It's just a vehicle. It doesn't force anybody to practice under the compact. And so you can't make people do it if they don't want to. So it just allows for that to happen. And so if you're still seeing shortages of professionals, and even though we're under the compact, it may not be because of the compact. It may be for other reasons why professionals are not seeking to provide services in those areas through the compacts. Could be other reasons.
Follow up or?
Did she have something else to add?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one more thing. What we have seen within the licensing board during the last 3 years is an improvement in licensure. Through the reciprocity process, we've seen an increase in licensure by about 230% from 2019 to today. And that is, I mean, yes, there were emergency rules during the COVID times. However, we expect that with us joining the compact, we will continue to see that increase in licensure within the state in order to meet this need.
Follow up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with regards to reciprocity, it's said that it's more cumbersome, there's more paperwork, there's more fees or something like that. What could be done if it's currently allowable for others to come from other states and practice through reciprocity? What can be done to just decrease the regulation, make it more simple for people to use the avenue that we already have in place?
I'm not sure we could cut anymore. I mean, if somebody wants to come to get a license in our state, we still have to do our due diligence. The board has to look at the qualifications of that person. They have to make sure they've passed the exam. They have to make sure that they have to look at their transcripts. They have to make sure that they've done their clinical work. And so all of that has to be researched and, before a license can be issued. I don't think you can shortcut that process. If you do, then we could be allowing people that aren't qualified to practice here. But through the compact, there's no need to do that if another state has already done it. So we're just accepting their license in this state because they've gone through that. And they're accepting our licenses in their state. It's again, I don't think you can make it any more streamlined than it is. I think the boards have already tried to streamline it as best as they can. But it just takes time and effort to do that when you're looking at each individual. Through the compacts, you don't look at all of that background information because that's already been done by someone else.
Follow up
Could I
again?
just follow on that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the fees that are associated with like a reciprocity license, is that mainly to cover the cost of the licensing process itself? Did those fees get used for other purposes as far as, are they used for funding of that agency or those types of things? And if that's the case, are we concerned about saying, well, now you just have to pay a one-time fee and we'll accept everyone and that may be paid in their own state, and we're going to take everyone's license, from out state, we'll accept that, no fees involved for our state. Is that an issue as far as just the funding?
Go ahead, Ms. Minow.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I'll speak candidly. We're not worried about that at this time. As far as the fees go, yes, our licensing board is fully funded by our practitioners and through our fees. We do not have any state dollars within our budget. All of our fees are involved in running the licensing board. I can't answer that question directly. As far as the loss of fees, we have been in contact with the licensing board. The licensing board is confident that they will be able to manage the compact with whatever the nominal fee ends up being for the state of Wyoming without a loss of income or without an increase to renewal fees and to initial licensing fees.
Okay, another question?
And just to mention, you mentioned one-time fee. The one-time fee, there's really not a one-time fee. It's reoccurring all the time. There is a one-time fee for getting a license, whether it's initial licensure or reciprocity, and that's typically higher than a renewal fee. But they're always ongoing fees. I don't know, it's 2 years for you? Every 2 years they have to renew, so it's a lower fee, but it's a continual fee. That's what keeps the board operating. And under the compact, it'll be the same way. If you have a privilege to practice, there'll be a fee with that as well, and it will be continuing. It won't be one time.
Representative Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So starting on line 12 on page 11, it says to participate in the compact, a state must currently, and it gives a list. And if you go to the next page, under line 7, it says that people who are part of this compact or licensees have to have 60 semester hours or 90 quarter hours master degrees in counseling or 60 semester hours of graduate course, including the following topic areas. Line 7 says B, social and cultural diversity. So that's a pretty charged topic there. Can you tell me what kind of things are contained in social and cultural diversity?
Go ahead, Ms. Minow.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ward, absolutely. Any of our schools for our licensed professional counselors have what's called a K-CREP accreditation. That is an academic accreditation that we believe is a national standard for our licensed professional counselors to be competent. This list that you see is the details of that KCREP accreditation for our counseling programs. It is far easier to get licensed when you come from a KCREP accredited school as opposed to if you do not. As far as social and cultural diversity, we do recognize that being socially and culturally competent is imperative in continuity of care and in quality of care. For the state of Wyoming, understanding our Native American brothers and sisters and understanding the tribes and the cultures within that tribe and the history of Wyoming and how that can impact a family system would be vital in providing accurate care to that client. And so it is recognizing where your client comes from, who they are, and therefore how their environment impacts their emotional and mental well-being.
Representative Ward, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because I'm sure you're aware that CRT, which has been in the news, which is critical race theory and the ideas associated with that, which include one race is better than another, there's oppressors and there's people subjugated. That falls under social and cultural diversity programs. So that makes me uncomfortable. And can you comment on that?
If you want to, Mr. Manoff.
Mr. Chairman, social and cultural diversity is something that has always been addressed within our profession, within the mental health care profession, as well as social work and psychology. I do understand that these words are currently controversial at this time. For those practicing within the state of Wyoming and those practicing within mental health, as well as the American Counseling Association, we are very comfortable with this language, and it is something that we have used for decades to describe understanding our client's background.
And Mr. Chairman.
Representative Penn, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've had parents approach with concerns about having counselors from other states where we may not have agreement with their political or social or cultural views than counseling our children. So say a more liberal minded counselor from California is now counseling our children that come from conservative homes. And what is the level of parental involvement as far as, what oversight does a parent get to have? And are there situations where a parent may be excluded from the conversation? So in my practice in healthcare, there is a gray area when a student or a minor comes in for specific issues that they can keep that from their parents. Now, the parents might still get the bill for the insurance bill, but the actual content of the visit can be kept from parents at certain ages, depending on which topic we're discussing. So can you speak to that as far as, a parent's concerned that their child may be getting.
Well, can you speak to in regards to the compact, right? I mean, we
Yeah,
can go into
right.
care, but if it was like a counselor from another state
Yes,
who may have different under this compact, does that
thank you.
concern you?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Penn, as far as for our practice act within the state of Wyoming, parents have access to their entire mental health chart until they are 18. There are times that we try to keep confidentiality for a child. For example, whenever I do an intake, I sit the parents and the child down and I say, I have to tell your parents if a crime was committed against you. I have to tell them if you're going to hurt yourself. I have to tell them if you're going to hurt anyone else. I also inform the parents that if they have any questions or concerns, that they can contact me immediately. And by Wyoming state statute, and because they are the parent or guardian, I have to give them that specific answer if they ask. As far as the concern, as far as more liberal conservative state lines piece, I do want to speak to that. It is highly encouraged that parents interview their practitioners, that they can ask questions, that they can investigate and do a very thorough background before they bring in that clinician to speak with their child. And I very much encourage the parents of my clients to do that in order to, because the therapeutic relationship with a minor is not just with the child, it is with the entire family. And so I think it's imperative for parents to do that. I encourage that within my practice. I find that is ethical practice. If that is not being done, then that is a licensing issue, which is actually a great segue for the compact, because that brings us into one of the great benefits of the compact, which is the commission and the database. If there is a bad actor who is inappropriately influencing a child and that the parents decide to make a complaint with their home state licensing board, the commission's notified. So Wyoming will be told, they will be informed if there are any bad actors. And because of that piece, the database piece, this is actually going to increase public safety for our adult clients and our minor clients as well.
Okay. We have to be on the floor in 1 minute. And so I apologize to anybody who came and could only testify today. If you can't come back on Wednesday, please submit your written comments. And I apologize to the committee. I thought this would be a 5-minute bill and I should have scheduled us for 8 a.m. So I might try 7:45 on Wednesday. If you're still available. Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not legally allowed to drop off my kids at school until 8 a.m. It is only 4 minutes away though. And
Okay.
so if you want to do 8 a.m., I can make that happen.
I may take some other testimony first, but we'll make sure to hear from you one more time. So
Wonderful.
with that, committee will be adjourned for the day and see you on the floor for